Hello YouTubers, here's Chris again with Cris Photography. I have been away for a while and I thank all my subscribers for subscribing to my channel. And here we are with a new episode. This time I would like to talk about wedding photography with Fuji X system. Here we go. Many of you might have the question, how is it to shoot a whole wedding with the Fuji system? Is it something that you can do or not? And also, most pro photographers shoot with a full frame system. They don't shoot with an APS-C, or in the case of Fuji, we have the medium format. The GFX 50S is not something I would consider for a wedding, and I'll go over that later. So now let's dive right into what gear I use for my weddings and what's the best setup for me. Here we go. First things first, camera body. I usually go around with two camera bodies. I'm considering to get an X-T2, a second one, because the X-T2 is my horsepower for what I do. So here we go, we have the Fuji X-T2. That's a great, lightweight, well-built and resistant, weather-proof or resistant camera. So it's very good for doing weddings outside. And then my second body is the X100F. I have done a video on this separately in my channel, which you can go check. Still a great little guy, and I'll go over the details as to why I really like this camera. Okay, so that's for the bodies. Now in terms of lenses. So lenses wise, I use my 56mm. This one is, as you can see here, gorgeous lens. A lot of glass, a bit heavier than other lenses, but we're still talking mirrorless systems. Therefore, it's a great choice. That would be an 85 if you would convert to a full frame system. And then on this little guy here, I have a 23, which would be a 35 on full frame. 35 is the perfect focal length, like we all know, for street photography. Is the most used usually. So that's why I use that one. Then sometimes I might need and find myself having to have something a little bit wider. So I use this 1024, is an f4 maximum aperture all the way through, which is very useful when you want to do like preps, when you want to do like rooms, let's say a hall if you're like in a church for a religious wedding. And it's also good for outside gardens or any type of location and venues. Okay, so these are the main things I use for my wedding photography. Minor, major, huge, small detail is the straps. So how do I usually go around? I usually take with me the bodies, so I have the X100F on one side, X-T2 on the other side, and I go all day long with my two mirrorless cameras. They're lightweight, that changes from my old Canon reflex setup, which was huge and would hurt my shoulders at the end of the day. So I have this guy here, which is Peak Design. I really like their systems, by the way. I use their Peak Design. I open it to the max, so I let it dingle on my hips, both sides, so I never like play around with the size and so forth. I just put it on and I let it go. And then I have this one here, which is another Peak Design slide, which is slightly bigger and you can hold more weight on it. Not necessarily something you need, but it's good to have the right type of straps for your cameras. There you go. So those are the main things I go around with in terms of setup. I always have a tripod, which I'm using right now in the trunk of my car. I almost never use it. You should be using a tripod. It's always a good thing. It's a good rule for photography to have steady and well framed pictures. Now on a wedding, I like to go around, have my X-T2, have my X100F with me, and I can just swap, and I go clack, 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 and I don't need to have a tripod because otherwise it would just slow me down. Now, the type of photography I do is a lot of candid. I do very little pose shots, like you can see in this sequence of photos here. Pose shots obviously are something you need to do. They're a major plus. People want you, they pay you to also do classic posed shots, so you also need to, you know, inform yourself as to which shots are better and which are the classic ones to do. Like throwing the bouquet is one that usually gets done. Classic bride and groom shots would include, like, you know, together in the field, or facing each other, kissing, and, you know, some nice, you know, shot with the long dress around the bride, or anyhow, anything that would, you know, be a typical shot that you would normally do. And then otherwise, these are the only two focal lengths I have been using so far in weddings. I know some wedding photographers like to have 70-200 or 135, or, you know, longer focal lengths. I personally find myself having a blast with the 56 f1.2. That's my favorite lens from Fuji. It's very versatile. Like the 85 millimeters for a full frame, we know it's very versatile for portraiture and for all that sort of you know, candid shots. It works just great. It's a very tight crop, so you can really, you know, catch people, and you can really show the emotions of people. Okay, so that's my two main choices. Now in terms of X100F, nice, neat camera. The reason I would like to buy another X-T2 body is because I find myself sometimes having a little bit of trouble in terms of speed with the X100F, and limitations in terms of if you want to, you know, either be the focus point or the depth of field. I'm having a little bit of trouble. Also at f2, the X100F is it tends to become a little bit blurry and soft, which is a bit of a problem for a wedding. Like if you want to take any details or anything closer, you can't at f2. From f2.8 up, it's totally fine. But that's the main reasons. I believe I would keep it in my bag in case, you know, so I always have a backup camera, or, you know, a tiny camera, because I really like candid, like I said. But having an X-T2 with maybe a pancake 27mm or even a 23mm, it's totally fine. It's a little bit bigger, but it's also more responsive and faster to shoot and to get the right moment. In terms of batteries, I have with me always at any point of time 6 batteries, which I charge the day before. SD cards, on the X-T2 you can put 2 SD cards. I do not back up my photos. What I do is I do it all in sequence, so it goes from one card, overspills into the other one, and then I usually have at least 4 or 5 SD cards just in case. It's always good to have. Nowadays they're really cheap. It's not like, you know, film back in the day, which when I was shooting on film, I would have a lot of film rolls with me at all times. I have obviously a lens cleaning little kit. And otherwise, that's about it. That's about all the setup I have for my weddings. Here you can see on these photos that it tends to give a very good result. It's very crisp, very sharp. The photos come out really good. And I didn't particularly get any, you know, problem for missing some lens or not being able to be at the right time, right place, right moment, because of some technical aspect. That's something I did not run into. So yeah, otherwise Fuji is just fantastic for weddings. I told you I was going to tell you more about the GFX 50S, why I don't use it for weddings. As a note, I do not own it and I haven't tried it yet, but while I do like to do also a lot of portraiture in studio, and I like to do a lot of landscaping, the GFX 50S is like we know, a medium format camera. And that being said, we're talking raw files that are 150 megs per raw file. plus the 51 megs for every single JPEG if you do RAW and JPEG, which tends to become a little bit of a burden in terms of space. It's also slower. You can do 3 shots per second. I tend to do a lot of sequence shots, like I use on the X-T2 with the grip. I like to use that a lot and do up to 11 frames per second. I ask let's say for example the bride to run from far away towards me, and I do a lot of shots, and then I can just shoot and get the best one out of the whole series. That's something you would not be able to do with the GFX, and there's other things like that besides the weight, which becomes almost like a reflex. Obviously we're talking about a medium format sensor compared to a reflex full frame, but the reason I swapped to mirrorless in the first place is to avoid having that huge load and amount of weight on my shoulder all day long during a wedding, which can be pretty stressful, and by the end of the day you just want to go home and die. So that's why I wouldn't use the GFX 50 as for weddings. I know some pro photographers use it for like preset specific shots with the people that are getting married before the ceremony, during or after, or they use it just for those photos of the groom and bride. It's fine, you can also do that, it's totally fine, you take it and you shoot, but personally I cannot see how this is going to go with my budget. I'm trying to keep it within the budget and trying to produce enough money out of weddings that I can cover and get more money for my equipment than what I spent. So here we go, guys. That's my views on wedding photography. I showed you a bunch of my photos. If you want to get more details, you can go on chrisphotography.info and you can see more photos there, or you can just send me a personal message or just put a comment. So any comments from you guys are welcome. Any questions will be gladly answered as soon as possible. And like always, stay tuned. See you in my next video. Bye guys. Cheers.